So this morning, this morning we're going to do a part 2 to my sermon last week, which was on love, and it was, they will know you are Christians by your love. But we've decided that we're going to, the topic is so, well, I guess this introduces our text. Like the topic is, it's okay. The topic is so important that you could almost preach on this every single week. So Matthew 22, Jesus is challenged by the Pharisees as to what the greatest commandment is. And he immediately says, that's easy. It's to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and strength. And then he adds this, the second is like it, love one another. And then he says this, all of the law and the prophets, the whole Bible, hangs on these two laws. Love God, love one another. So I talked in depth about love and what it means to love, and do people know that you're loving? Do people know that you're a Christian because you go to church? No. Or, watch a podcast, or you're able to talk about the things of the Lord? No. People will know you're Christian by your love, period. And so we want to talk this morning about how to love in a digital age. In other words, everybody's got these screens in front of their face, and lots of people have lots to say, and it's tempting as Christians that we want to be able to put our 2 cents in there. Like, we want to be a light in the dark digital world. But you have to be so careful with that. And Crystal and I have had some discussions, and I'd even say some debates, because she is an online girl, and I'm not. Like, I'm not an online guy. If I open Facebook or something, I do it to post things and to get ministry out, and I rarely, and it's usually advertising YouTube channel or one of my sermons or one of our worship gatherings. I reposted one thing about, and I preached on it. It was just something, and it hit me, and it was people need to stop rewriting the Bible to suit their generation or something like that. And sure enough, it rubbed somebody the wrong way. And I got from somebody I haven't talked to in over 20 years. And he challenged me and said, so you're saying that the seekers shouldn't read the Bible, and the people that are trying to figure things out? And I went, no, but I guess you can catch that from that crazy thing that I reposted. And so essentially I said, well, it's really, he said, is it just this generation? I said, no, you got me thinking. First of all, thank you for your reply, which I don't think he was expecting a gracious response. And but they'll know you're Christians by your love, right? And so I graciously thanked him for challenging me and said, you got me thinking. And I do think it's every generation. The Bible is one of the most misinterpreted, misused books in the history of the world. So anyway, with that, Crystal and I have had debates on, so when do you say something about what's going on in our crazy world? When do Christians stand up and say something? So she brought up the example of a principal or somebody at a school in Hamilton who was putting out kitty litter for those who identify as a cat. So when do you say something?
Yeah. There has to be a line. Like, you want to be inclusive and you don't want to make them feel weird for having this identifying as whatever. But at the same time, where has humanity gone? No one wants to watch someone dig around in cat litter and go to the washroom in the same room that you're learning. Like, I'm hearing that it's in the classroom. I'm not 100% sure if that's right, but either way, like,
probably not, because that would be indecent exposure.
Yeah, but I don't know. So it's just, I feel for these people who identify as whatever label they want to classify, but where do the rest of us fall into that? When are we allowed to say, you know what, I respect your decision, but can you respect my my choice as well? Like, we all have to bend to what the minority, I guess, well, not minority, but what all these people are crying for. But like, for the rest of us, where do we get to say that's a bit much?
So
without coming across as like you're prejudiced or racist or, you know, like all these labels, that is not at all what we're saying, and we want to love on everybody, but there has to be some type of a line. Like,
so the question is, how do you do that, and what format do you do that? And that's where the when we were talking about that, the answer is that's a phone call to that teacher, or that's a phone call to the principal, or it's a phone call or a letter to your MP.
Yeah.
You know, somebody,
if they're not listening.
If they're not listening. So it's not, and this is for us technical digital Christians, it's not a post saying how ridiculous is that there's kitty litter in the classroom. It's never, I can't emphasize that enough, it's never that. If ever there was a post that you, how can I put this?
You couldn't say it to their face?
Yeah. Well, but you know what? I would say that. We would say that to their face too. That part, right?
But it's not, you don't need to air out all of the dirty laundry on social media at the same time. Like, not everything that pops into your head or opinion that you have needs to be put online.
No. And in particular, any group.
Yeah.
Like whether it's sexual orientation or ethnic, or I don't know. Like even posting about Russia, you know, and saying they all need to burn for what they're doing in the Ukraine. You know, never. Yeah. Like, because then, well, first of all, it's a generality. But you can't have, you then would never have a Russian come to you to come to Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? And the same with any other group that you're trying to, like, we reach them by their love. And one thing I noticed, I said it actually in my sermon last week, and then I've searched the Gospels because I thought maybe I spoke out of turn, but I can't find anywhere where Jesus called out sin, and he was in a corrupt, sexually immoral society, like with the Hellenistic Roman. I mean, there were some terrible things going on, and he never called any of them out. But what he did call out were the people that were calling out sin in others, like the woman caught in adultery. He didn't say, well, do you know what? It's true, but you guys, no, he accepted her. I mean, he challenged her at the end of that little story to say, you know, now go and sin no more. But he said, I don't condemn you. And he's the judge. So why do we feel like we can do this? The online world is a bubble, it creates the illusion of safety. I think that's the same as road rage. You're in your car, you know, you're pretty sure nobody's going to identify you. They might see your car again, but hopefully they won't see who's driving. But you can lay on that horn, whereas if you were walking by somebody, you would never say, stop that, you know, or whatever. It's just, you're in your bubble, how much more when you're in the safety of your house, you have your digital device, there's nobody around, there's no immediate cause and effect, and you can just send out whatever you want. And I really feel like Christians in particular need to guard their tongue, guard their thumbs, and really think about what you're putting out there. They will know you are Christians by your love. You look through your account, is it all loving? Or it would only, and it could be all loving and then just have one post that calls out a certain group, and all of a sudden all of it's a clanging gong. Mm-hmm. All of it, even the good stuff, because they'll go, well, we know what's behind you now. So that's, I guess, the first thing we wanted to do this morning is really, like, Jesus said all the law and prophets hang on these two commandments: love God, love one another. And we can't emphasize it enough. In this digital world, it's way too easy to post something without thought, and I'm guilty of it, with that one post, just one. So, want to move on to the next? Okay. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is your kids. It's parenting in a digital age. First of all, one of my biggest regrets is giving my kids phones too early. And they got them when they were 11, 9, and 8, I think, something like that. And it was an easy Christmas gift because, I'd be paying monthly afterwards, but the phones were free. So, but boy, oh boy. And now they tell me, now they're all in their 20s, and they tell me the garbage that they were looking at when they were not even teenagers yet, and some of the conversations and gossip that they got into, and it was just, there was bullying going on, and I had no idea. I just thought they were playing games on their phone, but there was a whole world of evil that they were getting into, so.
I don't think that just stems from phones, though, because I remember before cell phones were like a big thing, there was that Messenger, that ICQ and MSN, and everyone would get on it after school. And then if someone had, my biggest pet peeve when I was in high school were people coming up to me saying, "I'm mad at you." And I'd be like, okay, well, whatever I did, and let me know what I did so I can correct it and apologize. Well, if you were that good of a friend, you would know what you did. That doesn't tell me anything. You can say something which might offend somebody, and if they don't express why they're offended, you can't fix it or have a discussion about it. And so they don't know where you're coming from. Like, everyone's point of view is different. But that is the biggest thing that bothered me. Well, you're not that great a friend if you don't know what you did. Mm-hmm. Well, you're not that great a friend if you can't tell me what I did in love, and so that I can correct it. And so that's kind of where it started for me, was with the ICQ Messenger thing. Like,
oh, so they were messaging you, saying,
it'd
so
be like, well, why didn't you talk to me today? Because you feel safer doing it.
We were face to face just a few hours ago.
So and I was pretty shy in school because I was bullied, right? So I was always kind of scared, and so I'd get on there and be like, hey, why were you like giving me dirty looks? Why weren't you talking to me? Da da da. Like, I would try to even go up and speak to them during the day, and nothing. And then all of a sudden it was, well, you did something, and if you don't know, then you're not a good friend. I'm like, so I just turned it off. I was like, I can't mess with that. So,
well, and I think that's a good, that would be a good rule number one. Never conflict.
Yeah.
Never calling people out. Never saying, hey, is everything okay with us? Never. That's that, because that's hinting at conflict, right? Never. And I've caught myself a couple times with texts where somebody comes at me and says something in a text, well, I call them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I even, this was kind of a slow burn. I even learned the hard way not to even say, this is inappropriate for text. Because that's conflict, right? You see how subtle it is? They'll say something, I go, this is inappropriate for text, give me a call. And that just fires them up, because I'm essentially calling them out and creating conflict or putting fuel on the fire. So it's so subtle. I know that one person said, or a sociologist said, if somebody told him that there would be this thing called the internet and anybody could put whatever they wanted, whatever's on their mind. Sorry.
He's trying to sleep and Charlie just went over and bugged him. Go lay down. Charlie, go lay down.
Go on. Go. Nope. Go. So, anyway, the sociologist essentially said, if he was told that this open-ended, no accountability, anybody could say whatever they wanted at any time, he would just say, don't do it. Like that is going to destroy society. And here we have the internet that has, talk about a slow burn. It started in the mid 90s, and it was, the little ICQ, and you could send this thing called email, and there was a couple businesses that would promote their product, but really there wasn't a whole lot
there was
on
no
there.
Interaction.
But as the years went by, now you have, like, look at the chaos with Twitter right now, where this Elon Musk has, who knows, me even just saying Twitter and Elon Musk, this might get reported.
Flagged.
So, which is how sensitive the internet is. But he bought this social media outlet, and it's just chaotic. Now he says now Twitter is free. Free from any accountability, and like now anybody can say whatever they want, and it's terrible, absolutely terrible. So, Christians, it's out there. They will know you are Christians by your love. This sums up the Bible. The digital world, you have to be so careful that you don't get into it. Anyway, going back to parenting. The kids now, at the age of 10, 11, 12, and onward, are teaching each other how to live, how to trick their parents, how to talk to their parents. And even as the kids are playing games online and they got the headsets on, so they're playing a game, but they're counseling one another. And we learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
And so Crystal's eldest and my stepson Ethan, he was living online.
COVID, I will say, made that
Right.
a little bit easier for him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, as a teenager, like I remember just wanting to do my own thing, and if I needed anything, I would talk to my mom or whatever. And with Ethan, I kind of took the same stance. And at the time, I was living in an apartment, and it was already kind of cramped and chaotic because it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and I had my boys sharing a room and myself and Lily sharing a room.
Mm-hmm.
So because that was all I could afford. And so when Ethan was online, it was kind of like my break from him. And unfortunately, I let that go way too far, and he got in contact with someone. Now, Ethan is an empath to a point. He feels bad for people when they go through certain things. So he got in contact with a boy who was being abused, or was saying that he was being abused.
And he may or may not have been. Could have been some 50-year-old guy.
Yeah, and that's what I tried to tell Ethan. But at the same time, like, you don't always want to hear a story and be like, oh, is that really true? You know, like, because if it is true, you're going to feel really bad for not believing, you know? And I mean, it's really hard in the digital world to figure out what's true and what's not. Because a lot of people only want to show their highlight reel. A lot of people flat out lie on their platforms and everything. So it's really difficult to discern the truth. So he got caught up with a person online, and his mood just changed. It was like he would hear the story and he would put it into his own life, like he was experiencing it when he wasn't. I would say the only thing that I did incorrectly was I didn't hold him accountable. I didn't invest in him the way that I should have. You know, I was, again, a single mom trying to make it all work. And I wasn't really focused on him like I should have been. And
it's easy to make these screens the babysitter.
Yeah, really, really easy.
Really easy.
So he changed from there, and then COVID didn't help, and he got into this group of friends that they all have some type of a mental health issue.
And they play off of that. And use it.
And so he would hear all these stories, and then he would try and relate. And I don't know if he actually believes it in himself that he was going through these things. But, you know, he's flat out told me that I ruined his childhood. And I think back like, my goodness, like, what did I do?
Yeah. But it comes down to the digital world that they live in.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, the last conversation that we had with him, because he has ran away and hasn't been in our home for about 6 months. And let me get back to that in a second. But one of the last conversations we had with him, we said, okay, you're gonna have to start going to the worship gatherings, and you know, we can teach you the soundboard, and trying to get something that he's interested in. And he said, well, won't that be disrespectful because I don't believe what you believe? I said, well, what do you believe? And he started to talk about
Greek mythology.
Because that's in his video games.
It's this game called God of War, and this Kratos, someone.
So that's his belief system, is now what the video game has told him.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the digital world, they are literally living in a digital world.
Like, it's not even reality. So I don't know if they're even in touch with reality, which comes with its own slew of mental health problems in its own. And you know, Ethan was always been pretty independent, so he always needs to figure these things out on his own. You know, you tell him it's hot, don't touch that. He needs to touch it to figure it out for himself, even though you know it's going to hurt him.
Yeah.
So maybe that was my misstep. I don't know. Like, I had a pretty rough upbringing, and the things I've gone through. So I always tried to make sure I didn't do anything so that, like, where my kids would experience the same thing. You know, unfortunately, they've experienced divorce, and I was a product of divorce as well. But I tried to make that as easy as possible, conceding a lot of the time, not fighting for anything really, and just allowing certain things to happen that shouldn't have, because I was worried about them. I didn't want them to live up in chaos, because that's what I did. Like, my biological father, he made it really difficult for my mom to be able to co-parent, and I saw that, and it was putting a lot of strain on my family life where I was living primarily. So I just looked at him and said, you know what, if you're going to continue this, I can't have a relationship with you. And I didn't see my dad for like 8 or 9 years. I didn't come back around until I was pregnant with Ethan. You know, I wanted Ethan to have as much family as he could, because it was, again, a single mom, right? So I tried really hard to have my kids not experience that. So when I see my son going down a road that I know is just going to hurt him, I try really hard to bring him back. And maybe I think my mistake was that I didn't do it out of love. I did it out of fear. So I came across as judgmental, and that could have been my misstep, instead of going to him and, you know, expressing to him my fear, and telling him, you know.
So let's talk about that. As far as this loving in a digital age, you've been trying to show love to Ethan for the last 6 months digitally.
Yeah.
Because he won't come around.
He won't come around, yeah.
And so what are the parameters? Because I know there's people that are dealing with this as well. In fact, let me just digress real quick. There was a 13-year-old girl that was missing. Hopped in a vehicle and gone, where was it, Windsor?
Yeah, I was in Windsor.
And there was an advocate group that was calling out on media saying complaining that the police didn't put out an Amber Alert. And this went on for a couple of days. They've since found the girl, and she's safe. I don't know about motives and who the person that picked her up was, but anyway, the police finally responded and said, this happened so much, and she willingly got into the vehicle and ran away from home. Mm-hmm. This happened so much, if we did an Amber Alert for every one of these, your phone would be going off multiple times a day.
You would get desensitized to it almost. Like, there goes another kid. Yep. Oh, there goes another kid, and you wouldn't do anything about it, really.
And it's the digital age. Yeah. You know, so anyway, it's so prevalent, and we know that there's people dealing with this. That's why we wanted to bring it up this morning. So what are the parameters to, like, you reach out to him how often, to Ethan?
Well, I used to do it. So when he first left, I said, I tried like my hardest to get him to come back home, but I knew that if I pulled him home, he would go and I would never know where he was. At least I know where he is. So I would reach out. I told him in the beginning, I want you to contact me at least once a day, just so that I know you're okay. Well, that didn't happen. And then I said, okay, what about once a week? And still didn't really happen. It did for a little bit, but I found the more I kept reaching out and the more rejection I got, just my mental health.
And somehow he knows it.
Yeah.
And so that's what he uses against. And, you know, if we go to the prodigal son, because again, in a digital age, and you're wanting to love him, and you're texting him, even, you know, I love you, and this. If we go to the prodigal son, the dad positioned himself in the home, didn't chase after the son, and that's so hard, especially in a digital age. You want to chase after him, you kind of want to follow his stuff. Well, that doesn't help, because there's some pretty dark stuff that is being posted, you know, and so that doesn't help. And it's also creating an illusion of what his life is, but we don't know. Yeah. We don't know if his life is as dark as his online life or what he's posting out there. So that doesn't help, parent. That doesn't help getting online and creeping them and you know,
following their friends, you know, the friend comments, and then you look at their stuff and you're like, oh my goodness. So, like, I don't.
So we position ourselves this way. We're not asking him to come back. We're not chasing him down. But when he comes to himself, which is the prodigal son line, right? When he comes to himself, we'll be there.
Yeah. It's like he needs to hit his rock bottom to understand what real rock bottom is. Like, he thinks that he's hit rock bottom, and he really hasn't. When he does, I think, is when he'll come back and understand the weight of what he did, his actions, and I think then he will understand me a little bit more, and be able to apologize and mend the relationship, because right now our relationship, like, we don't even have one. It's very one-sided. It's always me, And I have 2 other kids, so I can't like break because of this one thing. So
loving him is actually staying silent.
yeah.
And that's hard to do in a digital world when you can potentially see his stuff and comment on it. And well, here's the other thing.
I don't comment on any of this stuff.
Here's the other thing. Every time he skips school, Crystal gets an email. And that's been devastating and frustrating, and
And I think another thing that parents really need to be careful of is enablers. That's another thing that I'm dealing with right now. So my son has retreated to my mom's house where he has no accountability. And I feel like that's what his generation wants. They want to do their own thing at such a young age because they think they know better than everybody else. And they want no accountability. And that's a scary thing. A generation without accountability, like that can lead to very dark things and dangerous things. And so, I try to talk to him about, how is the dynamic over there? Oh, well, they kind of let me do my own thing and I don't really see them much. Okay, but they're not telling you to go to school. They're like, he's only in grade 12 and he hasn't been. And I get calls and emails twice a day and the school knows of the situation and we're trying to help him, but he doesn't go in order to get the help. There's resources at the school for him, but he won't go. So like everyone's hands are tied because Ethan doesn't want to do his part. And he's living with people who won't challenge him and try to lovingly put him back on the path because no one wants to be a high school dropout. Like I don't.
So we've kind of, in talking about this, and we're hoping that this helps some of the parents and grandparents out there who are dealing with this. And what do you do? We've just went, he may just be, when he gets to adulthood, and he's not far off, and he's 17, he may just be taking night school classes to get his high school diploma so that he can get a job.
I think for me it's really hard because the choices I made in my past came with hardship. There was a lot of struggle. I wouldn't change any of it because I have Ethan, I have my kids, I had my experiences which molded me into who I am. But I think that I don't want my son to go through those hardships. I want him to have a better life, and that's any parent. Mm-hmm. They want their children to have a much better life and opportunity than what you did. And my son is bright. He is a very intelligent person. And to see him not use that intelligence, it boggles my mind because I wish that I had opportunities that he could have. And he's just, in my sight, he's just throwing it all away. And that's a frustrating thing, to sit back and shut your mouth as a parent and just let them do their thing. Mm-hmm. That's been really difficult because he is his own person and he should choose his own path. And I just have to respect it.
Well, because if you don't, and this is a shout out to somebody who I'm pretty sure is watching, I won't name them, but she had adult children, adult kids living with her, and they've just moved out. And I just want to say that's the most loving thing that you could have done, is to say, you gotta fly, you gotta kick them out of the nest. And this was decades overdue. But it's hard as a parent. It's so hard. You want the best for them, but they have to fly. And the thing about the whole eagle and the nest and the soaring, for the parent, pushing the eaglet out of the nest you're going to learn to fly. But for the kid, it's, you just kicked me out of the nest.
Yeah. It's a different point of view. The parent wants the child to progress, and the child is like, what are you doing? Like, I was nice and comfy and cozy and safe in here. Now I got to go out there and do this myself.
Yeah.
The things that you provide for me, now I got to learn to do it myself. What kind of world is this?
Yeah. So that's, the parent, it's very difficult to push the ego. Well, maybe not in every case. It's like, go.
See, in my case, I didn't push him out. He just prematurely left.
Well,
so.
He claims that he was abused in our home. And I've said to Crystal, if there was any abuse, it would have been neglect.
Yeah, like letting him do his own thing. Because,
and I don't even know how we would do things differently, because he lived in his room in front of his TV, in front of his PS4 or whatever game he was playing. And he'd only come down if he needed something to eat or he had to relieve himself, Yeah. And so every once in a while we'd say, okay, everybody come on down, we're going to watch a movie.
Yeah.
We'd just sit there. Right.
The only time that really he kind of interacted with us was in the summertime. We would all be out there throwing a frisbee or having a fire and stuff like that. And that's when I would see the glimpse of my son, not this dark, broody, moody kid. This really happy-go-lucky, loving life, active human being. Yeah. And him and Levi would be climbing the trees out there, and it was a good time. And those became few and far between, because he would just retreat into his room, into his online world. And when your son comes to you and says, this is what helps my mental health, what do you do? What do you do in that case? And
ironically, it's exactly the opposite.
It's the opposite. And you try to explain that to him, and there's studies out saying that too much screen time is actually rewiring people's brains, and it's actually lowering, I think it's serotonin, which is the feel-good hormone, and so you're depressed more often. So I tried to explain that to him, and Ethan would just, well, it's not going to happen to me, and I'll buy blue light glasses and all. And he did all that stuff, and still. And I don't think it was necessarily the screen itself. I think it was the community that he found himself in. Yeah.
The teenagers.
Because they were really rude when I would go tell them. It would be 2:00 in the morning. And I would go up there and say, okay, it's time to turn it off. We're trying to sleep. This isn't good for you. You need to sleep. You have to be up early. And I remember hearing this little kid on the other end dropping swear words and telling him that he should punch me and I shouldn't be in his room, telling him this thing. And I'm like, where is your mom? Can I speak to her? Like, if that's how you think you can speak to an adult, it blew my mind. And I just kind of stared at Ethan like, why are you talking to this person who's so rude to me?
This is a school night.
Yeah.
2:00 in the morning. So we finally, our internet is hooked up to a plug that's hooked up now to a light switch. So if we would hear after 11 o'clock or whatever, and even that's too late, but after 11 we'd hear
clanging or banging or
talking,
scoffing,
and just walk out and click.
And then we would hear the whoof, and then
and then he's frustrated, and he's
so
wired for sound. But then he's got his phone up there at the same time, although that's Wi-Fi. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough, and the only answer is no electronics. But you can't even do that in our culture, in our society. If he had no electronics, he's now an outcast at school.
Well, and also there's work that he needs to do.
Schools are based online.
So there's a whole slew of problems that even the school is kind of giving parents. Like, how do you limit screen time when they have to work on a device? How do you limit screen time when you lock down our schools? You don't.
Yeah.
So then the kids, their fun device time is now taken over by school time. When do you give them their fun device time?
Yeah.
That's a lot of hours on a screen.
Yeah.
So it's almost like parents are being handcuffed in certain cases.
But the schools are handcuffed because they're educating our children, and we live in a digital age.
Yeah. It's,
And they
it's
have
very
to-
like hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So
Christians, Christian parents, they'll know you're Christians by your love. And I think, you know, in hindsight, you know, when Ethan would come downstairs, there could have been more expression of love
yeah.
and of acceptance instead of, you know, the little remarks of, and here we are confessing because I know it happens in a lot of houses, but, you know, guard your tongue.
Yeah.
Oh, so you got hungry, eh? Oh, so you do live here still, and, you know,
Yeah.
things like that. And they're not going to learn any lessons except through love. And now that they're gone, don't chase them. Don't chase them online. And yet that's so easy to do. And guard your own eyes, as it's a tough digital world out there, but love still needs to be the Christian standard.
Yeah, and the reason why, going back to what we had said about giving Ethan parameters and saying, okay, you're going to come to the worship gathering now, is he was surrounded by so much darkness. I wanted to give him a little bit of light. And our worship gathering is so, we have the Holy Spirit moving through the entire room most Sundays, and people are being healed, and there's testimony.
Yeah.
And he has a love of music. So, you know, perfect. We've got Dave, our sound guy. He can teach you. And so I was trying to appeal to his interests while surrounding him with Christians and love and light. And that was my motivation for it. It wasn't like, you need to go to church so that you get right. That was not my motivation. It was putting him in an atmosphere that could transform him. But he wouldn't take that step. He wouldn't go. That the next day he was out. He left for school, and I didn't see him again.
Mm-hmm. He texted
me saying, "I'm not coming home," and that was.
And I'm not ready to talk.
Devastating, and he still hasn't talked to me. So
no.
You know, I try to have him elaborate on this abuse that he says he felt, and I mean, everyone has a point of view, I guess, with regards to abuse. But I mean, for me, my standard of abuse might be different for Ethan because I've been through some traumatic stuff. Mm-hmm. His abuse might be, I took away his phone for a week. It's not abuse.
No.
You know, but they will call it that because that's what they've labeled it. Parents being unfair is now an abusive thing.
So I was just about to summarize anyway, so the timing's good. That watch what you're posting online. Parents, we've taken a good long time to let you into our situation so that everyone, even mom and dad, has put in there, helps you to pray, you know, for your grandkids and great grandkids. Mm-hmm. That it's a deep, dark, complicated world, and God needs to give us wisdom on how to love properly and unconditionally, and to know what, like, even some of the loving actions that you may define as loving actions may not be the best
perceived
thing.
that way.
Or received that way. So we're going to pray for all of us, really. So let's do that now. Lord Jesus, in end times, we're in end times, and we see the deceiver out there just going crazy and having his way and laughing his face off, stealing generations from their parents, from reality. Mm-hmm. And God, we just ask that you would give us Christians wisdom on how to love. We hear you loud and clear. The whole Bible, this whole creation hangs on love you and love one another. And we know that people will know we are Christians by our unconditional, consistent love. Now give us wisdom on how to love, what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, what to type, what not to type, where to look online, where not to look online. And we pray a hedge of protection over our children, whether they're at home or living elsewhere, grandchildren, whether at home or living elsewhere. And we just pray that the prodigals would come home, that you'd give us hope in the midst of devastation and heartache, and really a lot of terrible things being spoken by children to parents and grandparents online. And we just pray that you'd wash that and heal our hearts, and just bring a healing, so that we don't move in sadness or anger, but in love. And we thank you, Jesus, for your consistent work. You said in the last days, I will pour my Spirit out on all people, on all flesh. So we look to that, and we're open to it. Fill us with your Holy Spirit and bring hope in your name, Jesus. Amen.